I destroyed her laptop for revenge, but now I'm buried alive, hunted by a military drone, and the only thing left is the horrific realization I was the weapon they were after. The smell of burnt plastic still clung to the air, a metallic, acrid scent that always reminded me of failure. I leaned back against the worn leather of the passenger seat, my heart still hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a souvenir from the last 30 seconds of pure, unadulterated chaos. Outside, the suburban street was silent, bathed in the sickly orange glow of the single street lamp at the corner. My dad's new SUV was parked half on the curb, idling softly, the engine noise the only thing keeping the suffocating silence at bay. "So, you actually did it?" Dad's voice was low, a gravelly murmur that seemed to vibrate through the very frame of the car. He hadn't turned around. His eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, not at me, but at the darkened, two-story house across the street. Her house. Sarah's house. The house where I had just committed an act of digital and perhaps literal destruction. I pulled my knees up to my chest, the remnants of the crumpled black laptop bag digging into my thigh. It wasn't the bag that mattered. It was what was inside, or rather, what wasn't inside anymore, because it was now a fragmented mess scattered across her bedroom floor. "Yeah, Dad, I smashed her laptop. She had it coming." I spat the words out, the initial rush of adrenaline starting to curdle into something sharper, something I couldn't quite name yet. Maybe defiance, maybe regret, but right now it just felt like victory. A messy, slightly terrifying victory. He let out a slow, measured breath, the kind of breath a bomb disposal expert takes before snipping the wrong wire. "Coming? Liam, we've talked about consequences. We've talked about restraint. What exactly did she do that warrants demolition?" I gripped my phone tighter. The screen was black, but I could feel the phantom vibration of the notifications I'd been ignoring for the past hour. "What did she do? Dad, she wiped my entire portfolio, everything. 3 months of coding, the mock-up designs for the regional competition. Gone. Poof. She thought it was funny. She laughed when I saw the empty folders." The injustice of it was still raw. Sarah and I had been a team, working on this massive coding project for months. Then, last week, she got cold feet about the partnership, deciding she wanted the glory, or maybe the money, all to herself. I had been working remotely for the past 2 days, trusting her to keep the master files backed up on the shared drive. When I checked in this afternoon, the drive was empty, and her response to my frantic calls was a smug text message. "Finders keepers, losers weep." I'd driven straight over, fueled by rage. Her parents were out at some benefit dinner. I'd checked their social media beforehand, petty research that now felt profoundly justified. I slipped in through the unlocked back door, found her upstairs in her room, calmly scrolling through Instagram, her expensive, sleek laptop glowing on her desk. I told her to give it back. I said, "Sarah, this isn't a joke." She just looked at me, tilted her head, and said, "You'll just have to build it again, Liam. Maybe next time, don't trust the competition." Dad finally turned, his face illuminated by the soft dome light above the driver's seat. His expression wasn't angry, which was almost worse. It was deeply, deeply disappointed. "And so you grabbed the nearest heavy object, the decorative stone paperweight from her desk, and you pulverized her hardware?" "It wasn't just hardware, Dad. It was my future. And I didn't just smash it. I made sure every piece of data was inaccessible. I hit the motherboard directly. It's gone. Forever." I pounded my fist lightly on the dashboard, savoring the memory of the sickening thwack as the plastic cracked. She needed to learn that actions have consequences that aren't just polite emails. Dad was silent for a long moment, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. I could feel the tension building. This was the part where I expected the lecture on college applications being jeopardized, or maybe the grounding that would last until Thanksgiving. "Look, Liam," he started, his voice regaining some firmness. "I understand the frustration. Losing that work is devastating. But destruction? That crosses a line. You've effectively committed vandalism and theft of property, even if it was retaliatory." He sighed heavily. "We need to go inside. You need to talk to her parents, apologize, and we need to figure out how to mitigate this. This isn't over." He reached for the door handle, but before he could open it, my phone, still lying black on the passenger seat, suddenly lit up with an ear-splitting, frantic ringtone. It wasn't a text notification. It was a call. The screen flashed a contact name that made my blood run instantly cold, turning the small victory into a monumental dread. It was Sarah, and she wasn't calling to yell about the laptop. The caller ID clearly showed she was calling me from a number that didn't belong to her, and the name displayed wasn't Sarah's name at all. It read, unknown/emergency contact. My breath hitched. The sound of the ringtone, shrill and invasive in the quiet car, seemed to suck all the remaining oxygen from the cabin. Dad froze, his hand hovering over the door handle, his brow furrowed in confusion as he glanced at the glowing screen. "Who is that?" he whispered, the disappointment in his voice momentarily replaced by suspicion. "You said she was home. Who is calling from an emergency contact?" I couldn't form words. My throat felt like it was full of sandpaper. I knew that ringtone. I'd set it myself a year ago for only one person, my older cousin Michael, who was currently deployed overseas in a highly sensitive zone, a place where contact was intermittent and always strictly scheduled. Michael was supposed to be unreachable right now. It's Michael," I stammered, snatching the phone up before it went to voicemail. My thumb fumbled over the accept icon. "Liam, pick up, Dad urged, his voice gaining an edge of alarm. He knew Michael's situation. We weren't supposed to get calls like this unless it was dire, or unless something significant had gone wrong with the communication blackout procedures. I swiped the screen. "Michael? What the hell? You're not supposed to be—" The voice that answered wasn't Michael's deep baritone. It was tinny, strained, laced with static, and overlaid with the terrifying background noise of what sounded unmistakably like rapid, muffled shouting and the distant, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of a helicopter. "Is this Liam?" The voice was sharp, authoritative, and definitely not American. "You must identify yourself immediately. This line is secured and time-sensitive." My mind raced, trying to process the situation. Was this a prank? Had Michael somehow forwarded his emergency line to some highly irritated military operator? "Yes, this is Liam Thorne. Who is this? Where is Michael?" "Your cousin Michael is currently unavailable for communication," the voice snapped back, utterly devoid of warmth. "We are utilizing this secured relay for a time-critical transmission regarding the collateral damage associated with the location you were just present at." Collateral damage? The only damage I'd caused was to a piece of consumer electronics. Dad leaned across the console, his face pale. "Ask them what they mean by collateral damage, Liam. Now." I relayed the question, my voice shaking. "What do you mean, collateral damage? I was at Sarah Jenkins' residence." Address, the HP Spectre 15, was not solely the property of Miss Jenkins. It was also housing proprietary operational hardware vital to Project Nightingale. That device was tracked, and its destruction initiated a security failure sequence on our end. Project Nightingale? I'd never heard of it. Sarah was a drama major. She barely knew how to open a spreadsheet without looking up a tutorial. "I don't know anything about any project," I insisted, feeling a cold dread seep into my bones. "It was just her coding laptop. She wiped my files, and I smashed it out of anger." "Your anger," the voice said, now laced with barely contained fury, "just deleted 3 months of highly classified surveillance data pertaining to a hostile network within the greater metropolitan area. Do you understand the implications of what you have just done?" I looked wildly at my father. He was staring at me, his jaw slack. He had told me to go inside, to apologize. He had no idea that the petty revenge I'd enacted was apparently entangled with international espionage. Implications? I stammered. "We have approximately 90 seconds before the hostile network realizes the data integrity has been compromised by the physical destruction of the receiver unit. We need immediate physical confirmation of the surrounding perimeter security. Did anyone else leave that address in the last hour? Any vehicles? Any unusual activity near the property?" Before I could even formulate an answer, a new sound pierced the line, a sickening, high-pitched electronic whine that rapidly climbed in pitch, sounding like a circuit overloaded beyond its capacity. "Abort! Abort immediate contact, the military voice shrieked, the background noise dissolving into pure electronic screeching. The system is locking down. Thorne, listen to me. Get out of that immediate vicinity. That house is... The line went dead. The phone screen reverted to black, save for the tiny, blinking icon indicating no service. Dad, I breathed, my voice a ragged whisper, pointing at the house across the street. That was a military line. They said the laptop was operational hardware. They said the house is... Just as I spoke, the street lamp at the corner flickered violently, buzzed once, and then exploded with a sharp pop, plunging the entire street into absolute, suffocating darkness. And from the upstairs window of Sarah's house, the window directly above where I had just destroyed the laptop, a sudden, blinding white light flared to life, illuminating the room for a split second. In that flash, I didn't see Sarah or her parents. I saw a figure standing silhouetted in the window, unnaturally tall, holding something long and metallic that reflected the harsh light back at us, aimed directly at the car. Then the light vanished, and the silence that followed was broken only by the sound of a heavy, metallic thunk against the back window of our SUV, as if something substantial had just landed on the roof rack. The metallic thunk was loud enough to vibrate through the floorboards and rattle the loose change in the center console. It wasn't a branch falling. It was deliberate, heavy, and impossibly close. We were sitting in a relatively new SUV. The roof rack wasn't exactly flimsy. Whatever had landed there had significant mass. Dad reacted with the practiced, frightening calm of someone who had clearly seen more than he ever let on. He didn't look up at the roof. He slammed the gear shift into reverse, flooring the accelerator before even checking his mirrors. The tires shrieked in protest against the asphalt, burning rubber in a desperate, uncontrolled lurch backward. "Hold on," he roared, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The SUV bucked violently, throwing me hard against the door. As we peeled away from the curb, I risked a glance over my shoulder, back toward Sarah's house. The entire structure was now utterly dark, as if the power grid for that single block had been manually shut down. There was no sign of the figure in the window, no sound emanating from the structure, only oppressive silence. What was that thing on the roof, Dad? Are we being followed? I frantically tried to turn on the dome light, but the switch was dead. Every electrical component seemed to have shorted out the moment that light flared in the window. I don't know, Liam, but whatever was in that laptop wasn't just Miss Jenkins' homework. Dad wrenched the wheel, fighting the vehicle as it fishtailed slightly before gaining purchase and rocketing us down the street. He drove like a man escaping a war zone, not a suburban cul-de-sac. When that light flashed, I saw movement inside. It wasn't Sarah. Too big. Too still. I pulled out my phone again, praying for a single bar of service. Nothing. The emergency call had killed everything. I looked back at the passenger seat where the phone had been lying. The screen was cracked further, radiating a faint internal heat, even though it had been off moments ago. They said they needed confirmation about the perimeter. They were worried about hostile networks knowing the hardware was destroyed. I repeated the military man's chilling words. If that laptop was tracking something, and I blew it up, maybe those hostiles think I have the data, or maybe they think we initiated the system lockdown. Dad wasn't listening to my theoretical panic. He was focused on the physical reality of the chase, or what he perceived as one. He swerved hard around the corner onto the main thoroughfare, his speed alarmingly high. We're going to my office building. It has underground parking and a Faraday cage storage room, standard protocol for sensitive documents. We go there, we lock ourselves in, and we call someone who actually understands this mess. But Dad, if that person on the roof was waiting for us, they know we left. They know where we were heading based on my call log if they're tracking. Before I could finish, a blinding shaft of intense, concentrated light pierced the rear windshield, slamming into the back seats where I had just been sitting. It wasn't headlights. It was surgical, focused, and utterly white, searing through the tinted glass. "Get down!" Dad screamed, slamming on the brakes and simultaneously jerking the wheel hard to the left, sending the SUV careening into the landscaping ditch alongside the road. The intense light tracked us, momentarily freezing on the driver's side window, accompanied this time by a sharp, high-frequency whine that made my teeth ache and sent a nauseating wave of dizziness through me. It felt less like a searchlight and more like an interrogation tool. I threw my arm over my head, crouching low. Through the whipping sound of gravel and dirt kicked up by the uncontrolled skid, I heard a sound that redefined panic. The slow, deliberate sound of heavy-duty treads crunching on the gravel road behind us, rapidly closing the distance. Whatever was pursuing us wasn't in a conventional car. "Dad, look!" I managed to choke out, pointing ahead. We had plowed through a decorative hedge and were now facing a tall, chain-link fence topped with razor wire, the back perimeter of the municipal water treatment facility. There was no gate visible from our angle. "There's no time to go around," Dad yelled, already wrestling the wheel to aim the nose of the SUV directly at a weak-looking section of the fence near a concrete drainage pipe. The high-frequency whine stopped abruptly. In the sudden, shocking silence, the heavy tread noise stopped too. "They stopped," I whispered, my heart pounding against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through my sternum. "Why did they stop?" Dad didn't answer. He was too busy staring, wide-eyed, at the rearview mirror again, not at the road behind us, but directly up. "Liam," he said, his voice devoid of any strength, flat and utterly defeated. "Whatever was on the roof, it didn't get off. It's not following us from the road." I slowly lifted my head, ignoring the throbbing pain in my neck. I craned my neck back, looking up through the panoramic sunroof that was now partially obscured by dirt and shredded metal from the impact with the hedge. Floating silently, about 10 feet directly above the roof of our disabled vehicle, illuminated starkly against the black sky, was a large, matte black drone, impossibly silent for its size. It was shaped less like any consumer model and more like a heavily armed, segmented insect, and mounted beneath its main chassis, where the blinding light had originated, was a small mechanical arm. The arm was not pointing at us anymore. It was pointing down, toward the center of the roof, and it was slowly, deliberately lowering a small, rectangular package wrapped in thick silver foil directly onto the glass panel above our heads. Then, from a small speaker grill on the underside of the drone, a synthesized voice echoed down, clear and chillingly calm, overriding the roar of the damaged engine. "Mr. Thorne, since you chose to destroy the receiver, we will utilize the backup beacon. Do not move. The package must be activated from the inside." The synthesized voice, flat and completely devoid of human inflection, hung in the humid night air, mocking the sheer panic radiating from the two of us inside the crumpled SUV. "Do not move. The package must be activated from the inside." The silver foil package, no bigger than a deck of cards, settled gently onto the sun-drenched, dirty glass of the sunroof. It didn't click or adhere. It simply rested there, radiating a faint, almost imperceptible warmth against the night air. Dad didn't need to tell me not to move. My limbs felt locked, paralyzed by the impossible reality unfolding 10 feet above us. This wasn't a local police matter. This was military-grade retrieval, and I was the central point of failure. "What is it? A tracker? A bomb?" I demanded, my voice cracking. I needed to know if I should try to smash the sunroof and throw the thing away, or if touching it would trigger whatever Silas, that was the code name the soldier had used, was so worried about. Dad, however, was looking past the drone, focusing on the perimeter fence we had just failed to breach. "Liam, look at the drainage pipe." I followed his gaze. The impact had been violent, bending the thick chain link. But right next to the bend, near the massive concrete curve of the pipe leading under the fence, the ground was disturbed. Freshly dug, but not by our car. About 3 feet from the pipe entrance, a section of the grassy embankment had been cleanly sliced open, revealing a dark, gaping maw beneath the earth. It looked less like a burrow and more like a hatch that had just been forced open from the inside. "That's not a mole hole, Dad," I murmured, a fresh wave of nausea hitting me. "That's a tunnel entrance, and it's fresh." As if confirming my fear, a long, segmented appendage, slick, black, and disturbingly organic-looking, yet bearing metallic rivets, shot out of the opening near the drainage pipe. It was thick as my arm and ended in a cluster of needle-like sensors that immediately began sweeping the area near the damaged fence, seemingly ignoring the SUV entirely. Whatever Silas was tracking, it wasn't just data on a hard drive, Dad whispered, his voice now tight with sheer terror. And it looks like destroying the data just made it mad enough to come out of hiding. The drone above us remained stationary, its mechanical arm still dangling the silver package. It was waiting. It had delivered its ultimatum and was now observing the outcome with cold, electronic patience. If we don't touch the package, what happens? I asked, dreading the answer. If we don't touch it, Dad said, slowly reaching for the glove compartment, then it decides what happens next. From the compartment, he pulled out a heavy-duty, military-grade satellite phone, the kind of gear he only ever discussed in hushed, vague terms when he thought I wasn't listening. He flipped it open, revealing a heavily reinforced screen. I have one contact that might override the local kill switch Silas initiated. But if I make this call, we are inviting the government down on us, Liam. They will want to know exactly how you, a civilian, got access to a compromised black site data point. Dad, we are surrounded by a hostile drone and something that looks like a giant metal centipede coming out of the sewer. I think we've already passed the point of worrying about my college applications, I pleaded. He nodded grimly, his thumb hovering over the single illuminated contact labeled O section. Just as his thumb made contact with the screen, the silver package on the sunroof suddenly began to emit a faint, rhythmic pulse. Not light, but a vibration that traveled through the glass and into the roof structure. The drone above let out a low, guttural hum, its segmented limbs shifting slightly, preparing for descent. But before Dad could dial, the satellite phone in his hand emitted a sharp electronic shriek of its own. The screen flashed red, displaying a single, overriding message. Trace initiated. All calls terminated. We were isolated, cut off. And then, the organic appendage emerging from the tunnel shifted its attention away from the fence. It slowly retracted its needle-like sensors, pivoted, and began whipping its massive, segmented body directly toward our disabled SUV, moving with astonishing speed across the damp grass. The drone above us simultaneously lowered itself a crucial foot, the silver package now hovering barely a foot above the shattered sunroof. It's closing in, Liam. We have seconds. Dad shoved the satellite phone back into the glove compartment and snatched something else out, a heavy, wickedly sharp tire iron. We move on 3. You go for the driver's side door, hard and fast. I'll take the passenger side. Don't look at the package. Just run toward the treatment plant entrance. Maybe we can get behind the walls. He braced himself, readying his swing. 1. The organic limb was now close enough that I could see the oily sheen on its surface. It twitched, preparing to strike. 2. The drone began to descend rapidly, its hovering sound turning into a high-pitched, focused whine aimed directly at the center of the vehicle. 3. Dad swung the tire iron toward the locking mechanism of his door, intending to break the handle for leverage. But as he brought the metal down, the silver package on the roof suddenly burst open, not with an explosion, but with a rapid, pressurized release of thick, white, vaporous smoke that poured instantly through the shattered sunroof and enveloped the cabin in a blinding, choking cloud. I choked, swinging wildly at the door handle, my lungs instantly burning. Through the smoke, I heard Dad gasp, a strange, wet sound that wasn't a scream of pain, but something akin to profound shock. When I finally wrenched my door open and tumbled out onto the muddy ground, gasping for air, the white vapor dissipated almost instantly, sucked upward into the waiting drone. The drone was gone. The metallic limb was gone. Sarah's house was dark. I staggered to my feet, scanning the empty landscape, my vision swimming. Dad's door was open, but he wasn't climbing out. He was slumped over the steering wheel, completely motionless. Dad, get up! I rushed to his side, my heart seizing with primal fear. I grabbed his shoulder to shake him, and as my fingers connected with the thick material of his jacket, I realized something horrifying. His skin, visible where his collar had opened, was completely smooth, utterly hairless, and had taken on the pale, waxy sheen of the synthetic smoke that had just enveloped us. And then I saw his eyes. They were wide open, staring sightlessly through the windshield, but the irises weren't brown anymore. They were shifting, 2 distinct, rapidly rotating pinpricks of electric blue light, exactly matching the color of the activation indicator on the dead satellite phone screen. The twin blue lights in my father's eyes were hypnotic, unnatural, and deeply terrifying. They rotated with a mechanical precision that erased any semblance of the man who had driven me here. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The backup beacon wasn't a tracking device. It was a replacement. The smoke wasn't a distraction. It was a carrier for something that overwrote the host. "Dad?" I whispered, stepping back, my hand reflexively reaching for the tire iron he'd dropped. His head slowly, unnervingly, turned towards me. The sound of his neck joint flexing was not the familiar soft creak of bone and muscle, but a dry, almost dusty grinding noise. "Liam Thorne," the voice came out, identical to the synthesized monotone of the military caller, yet layered with a subtle, deeper resonance that seemed to originate from the very metal of the car frame. "The primary host unit is compromised. Initiating relocation sequence for secondary acquisition target." Secondary acquisition target. Me. I scrambled backward, tripping over the upturned remnants of the hedge. The drone and the organic appendage were gone, having completed their silent, horrifying objective, leaving behind only this perfectly controlled, weaponized husk of my father. He pushed himself up from the driver's seat. The movement was too fluid, too powerful for a man his age. He stepped out of the vehicle and stood between me and the road, blocking any escape in that direction. The blue lights fixed on me, scanning, calculating. "The data loss is unacceptable," the entity wearing my father stated. "The Nightingale asset must be retrieved. Cooperation is mandatory." "I don't have the data. I destroyed the only copy," I yelled, holding the tire iron up defensively, knowing it was useless against whatever was controlling him. "Incorrect," the voice corrected smoothly. "Miss Jenkins' system was the receiver. You are the coder. The operational parameters, the true Nightingale, are resident within your own cognitive mapping. You have been compiling the necessary algorithms for 3 months. You are the Nightingale." The implications were staggering. Sarah hadn't been working alone. She had been tasked with cultivating the developer, me, who could write the final encryption key for whatever high-level intelligence project they were running. My retaliation hadn't just destroyed hardware, it had vaporized the key interface, forcing the retrieval team to retrieve the key writer himself. I glanced desperately toward the water treatment plant fence. The hole in the embankment was still open, that sickeningly organic hatchway leading into the dark. If that creature, whatever it was a physical extraction unit, maybe it could be fought. But this thing wearing my father's skin was a direct order fulfillment system. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I backed away toward the tunnel entrance. The entity took one swift, predatory step forward. "Compliance will prevent unnecessary termination." As he advanced, I saw a flicker of something, a minuscule hesitation in the movement of his right hand, the one not currently braced against the doorframe. It was almost nothing, a ghost of hesitation, a muscle memory fighting against the alien control. It was my only chance. I didn't run away from the fence. I ran toward the open hatch. As I dove headfirst into the cold, damp earth of the tunnel entrance, I heard the heavy, artificial voice shout one last, desperate command, strained now with a new, underlying note of struggle. "Liam, stop! The structure is unstable. The environmental seal, it's failing. Get out of the—" I tumbled into darkness, landing hard on packed dirt, my lungs screaming from the lack of air. Before I could even catch my breath, the entire world above me shuddered. The sound that followed was not a mechanical grinding or a gunshot. It was the sound of tons of concrete and earth collapsing violently under immense, sudden pressure. The entire tunnel entrance sealed shut with a deafening roar of falling debris, plunging me into absolute, suffocating blackness. The white vapor, which had seemingly cleared the area above, must have contained a volatile agent. Whatever controlled my father had known that the tunnel was a kill zone for that gas. They had either self-destructed to protect the secondary target, or they had killed the physical extraction unit to ensure I was the only remaining component. I lay there, pinned by the sudden weight of the earth, dust raining down, the scent of burnt wiring and ozone stinging my nose. My phone was gone, crushed in the car. I was trapped beneath a suburban road, buried alive, the last person to touch a secret piece of military hardware. Just as the panic threatened to consume me entirely, a single faint light pierced the darkness nearby. It wasn't the cold blue of the synthetic takeover. It was warm, flickering, and smelled faintly of kerosene. A small, heavy-duty flashlight lay discarded a few feet away, and beside it, resting on the dirt, was a familiar object wedged awkwardly against the collapsing earth, a battered black laptop bag, its zipper half open. Inside, nestled safely amongst the dust, was a single, pristine, external hard drive. A drive I had forgotten entirely, the actual master backup, which Sarah must have hidden when she wiped the system, knowing the laptop itself was compromised. But as I reached for the light, a low, wet, scratching sound began echoing from deeper within the tunnel, a sound that wasn't collapsing earth, but something moving deliberately in the newly formed darkness, something large and very much alive, responding to the sudden absence of the gas cloud.